address the Bird Club. Last time we were up there north of the campus, UMass campus. And when you said you moved here, I was thinking, I've actually been in this building. When I was married, my wife dragged me in here for some program. I guess I shouldn't say that. My wife and I came here for some kind of a program. I think I stayed awake for the whole thing, whatever it was. Anyhow, how many folks have ever been to a national park? What a weird place to ask that question. How about national parks out west? Pretty amazing. You know, when I was thinking about something to say to introduce this, I was thinking, you know, I don't want to say or indicate by saying how beautiful the parks are out west. I don't want to indicate that we don't have beautiful areas. And I actually have a companion program to this one called Nature Odyssey East that goes from Newfoundland down to South Florida and actually comes through the valley and a bunch of other places. Including, I don't have where we met. It was the place you just told me about, the White Mountains. Then I have Maine, so Cold River's in there, close, but not. Got to get back. Right through it, exactly. The parks are extraordinary. It's not just the national, it's state governments and local governments have paid attention and put places aside. Even here, to Red Hadley, even over in Amherst at the conservation areas. Of course, now we have the County Refuge in Hadley. And the things you see at these places is just amazing. You spend enough time there, and if you're in the birds, you'll have a nice long bird time at the appropriate time of year. There's plants, there's insects. And just being outside is good for the insides. So I want to, I'm not going to introduce. I want to start up and visually up at Denali. Unfortunately, I was only there for a week, and I don't know how you cover a place that big in a week. But I have one or two shots. The only place I haven't gotten a lot of good pictures from, and I'm really sorry about it, and I will have to go back, is Yellowstone. I had COVID. The light, for some reason, didn't seem appropriate, but I am going to go back. I do have a few pictures here. And the more I think about Yellowstone, how many folks have been to Yellowstone? And you all know what it's about. As one article I read mentioned, it sits atop an active volcano area. And for those who don't know that, it's almost intimidating. I mean, there's steam everywhere, there's bubbling mud piles everywhere, there's bison standing in the middle of the road blocking traffic in both directions. You know, just kind of like standing there saying, what? But they don't even say that, they don't say anything, they just stand there. I just found it fascinating, and I watched people doing the best they could to get around them. I don't know how you get around a bison. Plus it was September, the time of year we were there, and they were mating, and they were walking around, not exactly covering themselves up, let's leave it at that. But it was pretty interesting watching all the bison walking around, and I'm thinking, what? Why are they all looking like that? And they are massive animals. And people do the weirdest things. They get close to them. I do not know. Well, let's not get into that. Humans just do dumb things. Part of this program, a very small part, I'm going to call Photography 101. Because there are some things that I photograph with nothing really in mind other than I want to see if I can get a picture of this. And I'll point those out, and you'll know it because I won't have anything to say about identifying the type of rock or the species of plant. I just photograph things that fit together. And I was telling someone today, and I've mentioned it other times, that I don't get as many requests for programs that I used to. But it hasn't stopped the creative juices from flowing. And it drives me nuts. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about things to photograph, thinking about ways to photograph things. And I can't stop it. And if I ever get to the point where I can't get up and walk around and take pictures, I'm not sure what's going to happen, because I think this part will still be going forward. So, instead of me talking, let's see if we, there's no door to block that light, is there? Can that light be turned off? Right out? The one just beyond this exit sign? Ah, good, okay. Why don't we take a look at Nature Odyssey West? Let's see if I can clear my throat. How about that way? Ah. Well, it's not exactly movie theater dark, but is there a light there that can be turned on? Ah, there we are. So I remember two of us driving north from Anchorage, excuse me. It was kind of interesting because I was in the Army in Alaska for 2.5 years. I was in Anchorage for 2.5 years, and I wanted to stop by the post to see if I recognized anything. And at the time when we were there, it was probably 40 years since I had left there. It took about 10 minutes to go through security, maybe 15 minutes to get in. Is that coming on by itself? I think you got it. If you want to walk around, you got to do it. Anyhow, we went into the post, and I didn't recognize one thing. That was really disappointing. So we got on, I think it's called Parks Road, that runs from Anchorage up to, at least towards, I think it goes into Fairbanks, and goes past the entrance to Denali National Park. On the way up, I kept seeing mountains off to the left, and I wanted to get a higher view, better view of those mountains, and I saw something called Mountain View Road. I said, this might be helpful. We drove up there, and this is what we saw on the river. It was September. You can see, I believe those are aspens turning, and a stream running past them. And we're on this road. There's a pull-off. I didn't know where that road went. And I'm not sure what's up with these lights, but anyhow, excuse me. A couple of buses went past me, and I realized that some cruise company was bringing people up from some body of water up there, going up towards Denali. And there were two places where there were motels. And the road I was on, at the end of that road was one of those motels. The other one was right up across from the entrance to Denali. So I'm up on that road at a pullover. I look back and I see these mountains. And I'm wondering which one is Denali. I'm using a 300mm lens, and these mountains were pretty far away. Somehow I'm thinking 30 miles. I'm not sure if that's right or not. But aside from the buses going by, looking at me like I was some kind of a feature they should be checking off, we got this view. And that view stayed like that for quite a while. And after about 2 or 3 hours of me trying to figure out which one of those was Denali, just mysteriously and dramatically, it started to appear in the fog. And I mean, it loomed behind the fog. And you're not seeing all of it. It is 20,320 feet. And I mean, right now I'm getting chills just thinking about what was going on in my head when I saw this. I saw the mountain behind the mountains that I thought included Denali. And I wanted to get a close-up, so I used a 300mm lens. But what I actually photographed was the summit to the left and the summit to the right, so I can get a closer image. To get the whole thing, I would have to use maybe a 105 or less to get the whole mountain in one frame. But then it would be too far away. So we stayed in the town of Talkeetna the second night up there, which was below this Mountain View Road. And that next morning we got up, and as we got closer to the entrance to Denali, this was the landscape. It was pretty dramatic. Like I said, it was in September, and some things were getting ready to close the next week. But you see the vegetation was not as beautiful as here, but it was pretty spectacular. Guess we're gonna have a fight for that light. Maybe we should stop breathing. So we're not seeing the mountains in the background because of the clouds, but the foreground was quite spectacular with that the conifers and what I think were aspens. This was a view of Denali from inside the park. So we were in the park 2 days. One day I drove as far as I could in my car, and another day we caught the shuttle, which went the same distance. To get beyond a certain point, I think you have to have a permit. You can get way out and actually spend the night under the right conditions. I would just leave it on. You're going to get a little crazy trying to keep it. I have a hammer in the car. So I was surprised to see this. We were on the shuttle, and they stopped the shuttle when 2 doll sheep showed up. And then we went just a little bit beyond. They had a couple of scheduled stops. And the one beyond this point wasn't too far, so I got ready. And when they stopped, I ran back to this spot and found out how long they were going to be at that stopped area. And I got a couple of pictures of this one doll sheep, and then I had to zip back to get on the shuttle. And it's kind of interesting because some of you know I've spent a lot of time in the Florida Everglades photographing all the wading and other birds. And the white birds are pretty tough to photograph in bright sunlight, and I had the same situation here with the white sheep. That's a sheep. Balsam, yeah. Yeah, this sheep. And it was a breeding season for the moose, and there was a female nearby. This day we were in the car, and on our way back from the farthest distance to the entrance, we ran into two moose. Well, you know how humans are. There was a car jam. People were all over the place, and they were actually, in some cases, blocking the bull. And the lady friend said to me, "Why are we leaving?" I said, "Number one, people, you could barely get past this mound of cars and people. And the moose was trying to cross the road. And I just didn't want to be a part of that, so I left." It was kind of hard to do that because the female and the male were right there. I took a couple of pictures and just got away from there. I'm not sure what people are thinking when you stand in front of a moose during breeding season. I don't know if they were going to do anything, but I didn't see the end of it. I just left. I couldn't take the stupidity of people. Who stands in front of a moose, especially when there's a woman, a female woman, female moose, excuse me, in the area? I can't believe people are that stupid. But I guess if you don't believe it, then something's wrong with you because they are. So it was the fall of the year. This is right across. This is that second road that goes up to a hotel that's owned by the cruise company. So I went up that road, found a place to pull over, and we're looking right into the park. And it was just, it was beautiful. So again, the colors aren't as variable as they are here, but they're pretty extraordinary. Now we're in Glacier National Park. I went to Glacier National Park. Matter of fact, it was the first place that I photographed that you're going to see within this program. I went there a couple of weeks after I graduated from UMass in 1977. I worked for the U.S. Forest Service and I had to do some research in the morning, so we didn't get started until the afternoon. We left, the guy who had the van, we left his house sometime in mid-afternoon on a Friday, and we were in Glacier National Park, sunny as sunset. We drove straight through. I drove first, and I drove all the way down close to Penn State in Pennsylvania, nonstop. And that's how we got out to Glacier National Park on Sunday and sunset. I had seen mountains before. Before I moved here, I had a trip from Philly to Fundy National Park and then across the Trans-Canada Highway to British Columbia. So I did see mountains on that trip, but I was a relatively new photographer, so I had nothing to show for a 2-month trip photographically. But I've made up for it. Last semester, I had a class with Dr. Hartshorn from UMass. He was a glacial geologist. And he was so good that the students gave him a standing ovation at the end of the semester. I've never had that happen before. There are a lot of things we talked about in that class I was experiencing out at Glacier National Park. We talked about deposition, then mountains being deposited, material that creates the mountains being deposited, and then things eroding away. And you can see it right here. You see different layers of rock, and here's rock falling apart. And it goes on all the time. Plenty of flowers, shooting star. This is just one trip. Sticky geranium. I call it glacier lily, but I've heard it called two or three other names. Snow lily, something else. And I remember reading that this flower comes in pretty much right behind the bucket of snow. I believe this is bear grass. I have to admit, my memory is not as good as it used to be. I don't have things written down. It's up in the old gray matter, and hopefully I can always recall it. I did enjoy seeing this. It was something I was very familiar with. We saw it on a hike we were going, taken up to a chalet, and 2,000 or 3,000 feet up, I ran into false hellebore. This is a plant that some people mistake for skunk cabbage. They grow in the same habitat. And it's one of my favorite plants. And they're not related. Other than they're both plants and they're both green. I know it's a bird club. But you gotta see the other program to see all the birds. This is a white-tailed ptarmigan, the only one of three that occurs south of the Canadian border. Of course, Glacier National Park is right on the Canadian border. Does anyone know, I don't know if it's still used, the official name for Glacier National Park? I had to look it up, and I remembered it. I think I saw it when I was out there. I know I saw it because we went to the other place. It's Waterton Glacier International Peace Park. And Glacier, being right on the Canadian border, essentially the habitat runs right into Waterton. They're right together. And we went up across the Canadian border and went over to the Waterton Lakes. I think Glacier is prettier. We have woodchucks here, they have hoary marmots there. And they pretty much ignore you. So I took this picture, and I often hear, oh, you know what it's doing. It's been fed. Not by us. No, we don't do that. Yeah, I was standing there, I mean, I don't even know how far I was from this, how close I was to this critter. People have been feeding it. There was also an occasion at Logan Pass, there was a big parking lot there. And one of the days we were in there, there was a bighorn sheep in the parking lot, walking up to cars, sticking his head in people's in windows, car windows, and people were feeding him. That kind of stuff can get you kicked out of the park. It also can get you hurt. And we just left. There weren't any rangers around. I'm not going to get in a fight with some big dummy because I say something to him about feeding critters. And I saw once, the Canadian Rockies. guy was rolling apples down the road to, I think it was a bear. I think. And there were cars in both directions watching. And either he ran out of apples or just decided he wasn't willing to feed any more the bear. He was just rolling down the road. They stopped. What did the bear do? The bear wanted more. He started walking towards the guy. I haven't seen anyone that wasn't on the track team move that fast, getting into his car. I mean, he almost hurt himself. Now, what do you think would have happened had the bear gotten hold of the guy? Yeah. And it was an accident waiting to happen. And it was another thing that humans do. Columbia ground squirrel. Only seen out there in the west. And if not mistaken, they spend a good part of their life hibernating since the winters are so long. So we were there in early July, guessing that all the water was due to the melting snow. It was kind of neat to be high up in the mountains and photograph what was going down in the valleys. And here's this stream making its way, let's see, Glacier National Park, Continental Divide, it might be running towards the Mississippi. On the west side of Glacier National Park, you went up into the mountains, especially where the chalet was that we hiked to. It was kind of interesting seeing the fog lifting and falling, and I love photographing silhouettes. So that picture may only be in the program because I love photographing silhouettes. So there was a moose jam. Driving down the road, all of a sudden traffic came to a halt. We looked around, and off to the right there was a pond. And this was probably the first moose I had ever photographed. So I got my 500mm lens, went to the far end of the pond, and took this picture. There were people with Instamatics, remember those? Trying to get this picture with an Instamatic. But I had to back away to get the picture. They had to do the opposite. So there were people way too close to that moose trying to get a picture like this. I mean, it's just amazing that the wildlife pretty much ignores people. But there are times that that doesn't happen, and something tragic occurs. This has to be one of my favorite pictures. It's just, you see these critters, and you see them far enough away that you're not overly affecting their behavior. Is what I have pleasure, or derive pleasure from doing when I get a decent picture. And I don't think I altered the critter's life in the process of getting the picture. Rocky Mountain goat taking a rest. So it's kind of interesting. You see bighorn sheep bang heads, deciding who is going to get the harem. And a couple of things. I'm glad that male humans don't have to do that. Otherwise, I think I'd be a eunuch. I would just stand around and look at trees. And The bighorn sheep are excellent climbers. I mean, they go to places you get a headache thinking about places they can climb up and over. And like I said, during their breeding season, they bang heads. Can't imagine. Look at the ends of those horns. And the light is on them, which just kind of brings out the fact that they're sharp. So these guys do not bang heads. I'm not sure what they do during the breeding season. I think they just avoid one another. Here's a male coming out of his winter coat. I found these to be fascinating critters. And one of the best pictures I got, perhaps ever, was this mountain that could climb. This animal that can climb to the top of a mountain and over the top, taking this gentle step. It's one of the best pictures I've ever got. It's that same animal you just saw, as you see he's coming out of his winter coat. He seemed to be pretty gentle. There's a bighorn sheep. Not only is he climbing up a steep mountain, he's eating while he does it. I do the opposite. I climb a steep mountain and I throw up. So I guess we're sort of on the same page, but we're kind of operating in different directions. These things are just fabulous to see. I was so happy to see all of these animals up close. And again, one of the people in our group had a lens, a camera with a real short lens, so she couldn't really get telephoto shots. She wanted a close-up picture of the sheep. And before I knew it, she got closer than she should have. She backed off when he put his head down. Again, though, if she had gotten too close and blooded, got hurt, we know the results. I've dealt with this all my life as a photographer. A lot of times, I'm not even taking pictures with all this equipment. I'm watching things that people do. And I could write a book that I don't think I would believe, even though I told the truth when I wrote it. Some of the things I've seen. The Everglades, out west, it's just mind-boggling. Now, this is a rather interesting photograph because look at the expression on this guy's face. And see, he has his head tight, slightly tilted. And the reason why it has an expression is because he had just taken a leak when I was taking the picture. And he's looking at me like, geez, buddy, give me a break. Have you no scruples? I quickly took the picture and left. I was embarrassed when I got the shot. And yes, that's what you think it is. See that hump on the shoulders, you don't have to guess. And at the end of the row where our tent was in the campground, there was this big green thing. I asked somebody, what is that? Oh, it's a bear trap. What? I remember one night I had to go to the bathroom. It wasn't that far away. But I was not getting out of that tent in the dark, that trap, just a couple hundred feet away. And I remember this day, 2 or 3 vehicles going down the road. We spotted the grizzly bear. Some of us got out of our van. Some people in the other vehicle got out and running towards this critter with our cameras. And I think the closer we got to the bear, and the farther we got from the car. And there's something I learned in ecology about 2 fish fighting back and forth. I don't know if you remember that. I won't get into that. But it's similar to what we were going through. The farther we got away from our safety zone, which was the car, the more nervous we got. And we eventually stopped and ran back. We got more brave as we got farther away from the bear. The bottom line was we were farther away from the bear. And I'm thinking, wow, this picture is going to be quite a distance. But I'll be alive to show it later. I found mountains just fascinating. And this is probably the best mountain shot. This is in Glacier National Park. So it's whatever the range is. And at one of the ponds where we were photographing mountains on the other side of the water, just to our right, there was a hotel. And we were trying to guess how much one of the rooms that faced this view would cost. And we figured out whatever that amount, it probably cost more than all of us added together had in our pockets for one day, or one night. This was absolutely beautiful. The cloud, I took a couple of pictures. The cloud was a little different, but right to this picture, it just sort of settled down on the top of the mountain. That was the last picture I took. This is actually the very first picture I took when we got there that Sunday evening. It was a sunset shot. We hadn't even found a place to stay. And I got my camera gear out and got this picture. I think my autofocus is flipping out of me here. So one of the guys knew about a place which I hadn't found on a map yet, south of Glacier, I believe. It's called the National Bison Range. Anyone ever heard of that?
John, it's actually west of the Blackfeet Valley.
Ah,
it's west of
it's
Glacier.
west.
Yeah, it's on the flathead. Yeah.
Okay, I'll look on the map tonight.
Yeah.
The problem with doing that is I pull a map out and it's all over. I mean,
Yeah.
You do it for a couple of hours looking at the map. I was trying to find it the other day and couldn't. So it's west. Okay.
Yeah, near Flathead Lake.
And I remember Flathead Lake. So here's a bison coming out of its winter coat. And they're having a little confab. But then something interesting happened. And you see the waddle where they're rolling around in there, trying to get rid of insects and there's water in there, get mud and try to get rid of insects. They're interesting characters, and they're big if you see them up close. Well, one of them had to go to the bathroom. And the other ones gave it some room. And you can't really see it here. There's a big dude right there. Right there, I stopped the action. So I showed this years ago at Arcadia for some meeting. And there were two nuns in the audience. And I said something about this bison going to the bathroom. And I'm thinking, maybe I shouldn't have said that out of respect. They laughed so hard, I said, we're going to get sick. And when I pointed out where the dropping was, I mean, you should have heard them. They were, ah! They had a sense of humor, I couldn't believe it. So at this National Bison Range, we also ran into pronghorn. And again, they're coming out of their winter coats. Might give you an idea how long the winters are up there. Because this is July. I had never seen a pronghorn before. I showed these slides, I showed the Glacier National Park program years ago at my bird club down in Philadelphia, and I said pronghorn, And the guy stood up afterwards and said, well, they're pronghorn antelope. And I said, no, they're pronghorn, they're not antelope. And he insisted they were. So I stopped the discussion. I kept doing the program, but I didn't get back into the discussion with that guy. When I got home, I checked with a neurologist, behavioral and some literature, and indeed they are not antelope. We only have those out west. They're not related to the antelope we see over in Africa and other places. It's our version of an antelope, but they're pronghorn, and you can see the prong right there. And I got close. Not that close. We actually got out of the car, which we weren't supposed to do, or the van we were in, followed 2 or 3 around for a while. Someone reported us as harassing the pronghorn. At some point, a ranger came by and said, all right, guys, you got to get back in your vehicle. Someone reported that you were harassing the pronghorn. I actually came here and I've been observing you, and you were not harassing them, but we don't want you out of the vehicle, because if by chance you stampede bison that happen to be in the area, they'll run possibly through the fence. It's a big area, you can see the fences. We'll have to go retrieve them and then repair the fence or get back in the van. But he saw that we were not harassing. We stayed back, same distance. At one point, this person stopped and bore his teeth. Now that might not be what you think, because I was told, and I think I've seen footage, that when these things are breeding, this may be a way of scenting the condition of the female. It's got something to do with breeding. So it wasn't actually making faces at us. But this is one of the pictures that I really liked. Maybe get one this close with a 500 millimeter lens, which weighs 8 pounds, so I have to lug that thing around. So here we are in Yellowstone. And I really wasn't satisfied with Yellowstone photographically. The geology was very interesting. I'm still trying to learn about it. But, you know, Yellowstone, because of what it actually is much more interesting when you think about the volcanic activity, more so than the geological activity. And that explosion, as they referred to it recently, at Yellowstone was a thermal, I don't know if explosion is the right word, just what I saw online. It was water, hot water, bubbling up under the ground, and it just exploded. It was water, not any volcanic material. And it made quite a mess, but luckily no one was hurt, because I saw a picture of how it looked after everything settled down. There were rocks all over the place. I think probably the boardwalk was beat up. But they expect more of these things to be happening in the future. So we know when geologic material is laid down, it's laid down this way. So you can see the different layers of rock. So something either tipped down to the right or was blown up to the left, because everything is leaning from left to the right. It's probably the best landscape picture I got under the light conditions and under my health conditions at the time we were in Yellowstone. And I have no explanation as to what this is, because it's more sand than rock. It's one of those habitats, and even at that, it's sand and rock, there's still trees growing. It's just amazing how persistent nature is. And at some point, humans aren't going to be here, and things will still be going on as business as usual. Old Faithful. And of course, that's only one, there's other geysers around, as we all know. I mean, the place is just steaming all the time, which, like I said, keeps you on your toes. I assume the scientists know when something big's going to happen. Having said that, they didn't know that eruption a couple of weeks was going to happen. That was not predicted. If it was, so people wouldn't do it. So, it's a interesting place. This is one of those bubbles, you can't really see the bubbles, but there's steam coming out of this mud puddle here. And it's kind of interesting. The trail goes right by it. I'm thinking, you know, why a minute you walk that close to these things? But I guess they know what, I assume they know what they're doing. One of the many valleys, right before we went out there, there was, I don't know if it was a fire or a flood, but we were planning to go into the northeast entrance, and it was still closed. And we had to go farthest south to the east side of Yellowstone. We had to go farther south, not to the corner where the northeast entrance is, and go into that entrance. So we really couldn't get into the Lamar Valley, which is one of the real popular areas. We couldn't get on the west side of it. This might be the west side of the Lamar Valley. There's the bison. You see they're not as shaggy as that one bison was that I showed you earlier. One of my favorite animals, my favorite mammal, is the elk. I think moose are spectacular, but elk I find even more dramatic, more even cooler. How many people have ever seen an elk? How many people have ever heard them bugle? That's pretty impressive, isn't it? Now, I can imitate birds, but if I try to do elk, you won't be hearing any more in regards to these slides. So we're down at the Grand Teton National Park, and there was a fenced-in area. I don't know if it was called Elk Park, or it had something to do with elk. We didn't see any. And I found out later that that time of year, they're up in the mountains. And that was most disappointing, because I think they're just elegant animals. And this is about the time I was really feeling pretty bad. But being a real trooper, get photographed. And I couldn't figure out if some of this was snow. It's hard to tell. It might be sand, because there was some really interesting, looking like snow there. But up in there, I'm not sure. Capitol Reef National Park. I remember someone who I talked to before I went out on this trip saying to me that, Capitol Reef, you can spend a couple hours there and just keep going. We were there for a week. After 2 days, I said to my lady friend, Jackie, we do have some other places we want to go. Capitol Reef is spectacular. How many people have been there? And that's what it is. It's the most underused park in the area. Did anyone over here raise their hand? What did you think of it? Beautiful? Orange?
Every place is used. So it's not going to be overwhelmed with that. You can see it all.
Okay, I'll believe it. So I want to try this very quickly, because I keep forgetting part of it. Capitol refers to, and I'll show you a picture in a few minutes, rocks that are shaped like the Capitol in Washington. Supposedly that's where it came from. The reef refers to the fact that there's these very tall cliffs that are a barrier to travel. Although there is a road now so you can get in. I guess this was made by people years ago, and it may have been a barrier. Capitol Reef. Did anyone know that? I just read that, and I said to myself, they're gonna think I made that up. So one of the first things I photographed was this. It was just the color and just the pattern in the rock. I have nothing to say about it. I don't know if it's sandstone or not, but it was just a beautiful, beautiful mountain view. And that's all I can say. So you can probably see that little structure with the lines, this area here. And I just use a long lens to enhance it. There's strange stuff going on. And I apologize for not knowing the geology. It's not because I didn't try. I read some of this stuff, when I finished, I said, huh? Read it again? I said, huh, again. And I don't want to stand here and screw up trying to explain something I really didn't understand. But absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Different. I mean, here, this is just stunning. Different. It's just like the same, well, it's the same color here as there. But this is like a totally different intrusion of rock. Now I'm not going to try to explain it. Because I have ideas, but I'm not sure what's going on. And I know this is deposition of erosion. You see the big rocks up top. And then it's like a different rock here, and then erosion down here. The trees drawn all the way up to the top. Crazy. This is something called the cathedral. And when I edited the slides, I put aside all the ones I liked, put in a bag ones that were question mark, and then got rid of the ones that were obviously not worth showing anymore. And a while later, a year or two or three, it's kind of coming back upset. This is called the cathedral. There's a sign there. I don't have it in the picture. It says the cathedral. I could not see the cathedral. I saw the rock. The cathedral didn't make sense. So this is one of those slides I put aside. And a couple of years later, I went through that bag or box where I had these slides that I had taken that I originally didn't really like, but they weren't bad quality. Just didn't like them. I found this slide. Guess what? I could see the cathedral. That is one of the strangest things I've ever had happen in my life. I could see it. What month?
The yellow tree.
September. You can really see it there. I have no idea what this is. I said it when I took it. I think it's some kind of a grass. I looked in a couple of different books. I looked online. Nothing. That's all I photographed it. Figured it out later. And then there was this lone tree, all by itself at the top of a small cliff. up against the blue sky. And I said I have no reason for photographing this tree other than the fact that it's in good light. It has an excellent background, which are the things I tell my students. You have to have a good subject, you have to have good light on the subject, and you have to have a good background behind the subject. There it is right there. So here's one of those pictures where I didn't take it for any reason other than I love silhouettes. There's a silhouette up against a sunlit object, so it really stands out. So the same day, and not too long after I took this picture, I took that one. It's a complete opposite. It's not a silhouette, it's fully lit, but it's in front of an area that's in shadow, so it stands out. Photography 101. Nature photography 101. So the last day we were in Capitol Reef, that place that we should have been able to get out of in 2 hours, realizing that we had other places to go. The day before the last day, we were somewhere up one end of the park, and we were planning to go to a ranger-led program on petroglyphs. And we said, we're doing well up where we are, photographing, Jackie's hiking around, we'll pass on that. And while she was hiking around, she found this up a dry stream bed. So the last morning we were there, we went to this dry stream bed, and that petroglyph lecture that we missed the night before, okay, I photographed my own petroglyphs. I mean, it's just amazing. I almost can't believe that this is from historical time. I mean, this stuff would have been done hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But look at the quality. It's like some kindergarten class went out there and drew on the rock. But supposedly it's authentic. So here's that area that I believe gives Capitol Reef its name. It's these rocks they're talking about with that rounded top. It supposedly looks something like the Capitol. It's the word Capitol, the Capitol Reef. So we left Capitol Reef, we headed down towards Bryce Canyon National Park. On the way, I spotted this, drove past it, went a little farther, made a U-turn, came back, and stopped and photographed. Something about that picture just grabbed my attention. Then in Bryce, parts. It's just loaded. And I saw knowledge. This is in Bryce. That March. You can't this is phenomenal. And Oh, I know that. And I'll show you how I know that. This was beautiful. The hoodoos were just spectacular. I'm not saying it's the best light, but I saw some pictures in the visitor center and in a restaurant just outside the park, and the lighting on those pictures was spectacular. But I didn't see the lighted areas in Bryce itself. So I kept rolling around, and at sunset, we were at Sunset Point. That is a mistake. The soul is a busload, maybe 2, maybe 3. Busload of people at that point. And we were standing there pretty much alone initially. But as the sun got lower in the sky, the crowd got bigger. We were crushed up against the fence. And I said to Jackie, let's get out of here. And we drove up the road to Sunrise Point. That's this. We get to the parking lot and it's dark. So we had to walk up this ramp. And I said, let's just leave the equipment in the car. And we get up to this view. Jackie felt we were holding hands. She felt me tense up when I saw this. She let go. I sit back down to the car, grab my gear. Can't say I ran back up that ramp. It wasn't all that clear. And I got 1 or 2 or 3 shots before the light was still up. The sun was still up, but the light dropped from this to something else. So I got that picture that I had seen. It was taken by other people, either in the restaurant and in the business. It was spectacular. I was dipping all the way home on the airplane. Whee! It doesn't matter with that guy. Grand Escalante National Monument. It's in the southeast corner of Utah, between Bryce and Zion. We drove through it, going from Bryce to Zion. And it's huge. I don't know what else to say about it, but it is huge. It might be larger than any of the national parks. And here we are in Zion. I remember stopping in the middle of the road, jumped out of the car, and I was asked by a passenger, what are you doing? You can't park here. Oh yeah, I'm acting like a tourist. I had to get back in the car and pull over and get this. Totally different than Bryce. Hadn't seen Zion yet. That was one day. I think it was in the evening. And I wanted to get the sunlit area. The area on either side of it was in shadow. So I had to tiptoe across the rocks in the stream. Tiptoes, I didn't get wet. And unfortunately, it worked out. The trail goes from the right and goes right across the stream. So I had my fingers crossed that no hikers would go by. I was able to get this shot off before anyone showed up. It's the best picture of the very few that I took in Zion. This is also Zion. We were up some mountain. I've forgotten which one it was. Not that colorful. I'm not sure what I think about Zion. It didn't seem to be as beautiful as Bryce, but it could be the light of the timing, who knows. I could go back. Death Valley. How many people have been to Death Valley? Not many. It's interesting that there's mountains on both sides of the valley. And one of those mountains is called the Funeral Mountains. And I'm thinking, oh, this death thing is pretty prominent. I better pay attention to that. But it was actually extraordinary, quite dramatic. What really got my attention were the dunes down in the valley. And at one point, I'm looking around and I see this white thing, white area on the rock. Anyone have an idea what that says? It's actually words. I use my binoculars. I just forgot sea level. That's what it says, sea level. So I don't know how low I was where I'm standing, but I looked it up. What's the lowest point in Death Valley? It's 282 feet below sea level. I don't think I was that low. But now I'm wondering which employee made a mistake and had to go up there and put that on the mountain. Sea level. It's just amazing. I don't know what's popular. Death Valley has the lowest temperature, I think, ever recorded, maybe in modern times. That's the less. 134 degrees. Highest, I'm sorry. Lowest elevation, 282 feet. It's the driest place in the country. Lowest, driest, hottest. So we were at, one day, we went to the area where the dunes are. And I was co-leading the trip. Didn't say much about any of the locations we went to, except I liked them. But I encouraged the group to want to go back to the dunes. Now, as a leader, I had to, one of the leaders, keep an eye on the group. And at some point, everyone just disappeared. I was thinking, well, they're all going that way, so I don't want to photograph in the direction they're going, and then I'll have footprints. I found this picture is just, I think I dreamed about it. I love hills, I love layers, I love something about dunes that I just find dramatic and effective. Then I found footprints. I have no idea what that is, and I'm guessing a small road. I couldn't make sense of the tracks. It looks like there's these tracks here, and there's something outside of that. And I haven't figured out what that might be. But it changes every day. So here's one of those pictures. I have no idea other than the fact that there's two different types of rock. You can see it clearly. There's this lighter stuff, and then this is more ground up rock. Blue sky, and there just happens to be, it'd be nice if there was a puffy white cloud there, with a nice little light colored shrub, looks to me. That's the composition I got based on what I saw. There's a place called Manly Beacon. And I actually forgot to look up what exactly Manly Beacon is. It's just an odd shaped rock. I remember we spent a long time here at sunrise to go to Death Valley. Very colorful rock here on the right. And the light kept changing from shady here, sunny there, and reverse back and forth. And we did it over and over and over again. And I was getting into photographing and not paying attention to the group. So at one point, I went out and found there were a lot of people here, not other than our group. But again, I'm one of the leaders, so I have to kind of pay attention to see if people are being entertained when they're on their own, they're satisfied that they're getting their money's worth. So I went up, and everyone all right? They all said yes. I went back Waiting for the light to change, we got a couple of pictures. It's a pretty prominent structure. So one of the things you've noticed is that I'll photograph the same subject with different focal length lenses and get essentially two different pictures. I call it welcome to the city. Here are those rocks off to the right, you can see the colors. I would love to know the geology of this area. That when you see rocks piled up one over the other, different colors, different layers of rock, this is all off to the side, and it's like this. I don't know if you can, it looks like it was maybe vertical one time and then went horizontal, but still there's a vertical area here, and the same kind of rock here, right there, the two tones. There's something interesting going on, and I can't figure out what it is. But it was a very colorful area under those light conditions. And now we're in actually California, we're still part of Death Valley. I have this boardwalk here, because you walk from the visitor center down this boardwalk, the Devil's Hole. How many people know Devil's Hole? The pupfish are in there. And what I read, I kind of mentioned this is the only place where you see them, but we actually saw them in other places. This is a hole that they think may be as much as 500 feet deep. And is somehow geologically arranged in that, and I just read this again today because I didn't read it the first time. There have been eruptions, earthquakes, or some kind of an eruption in other parts of the world, and the water in this hole reacts. Pupfish, balloons. They're endangered, only found, I think that this is supposedly the rarest fish in the world in history. How would you know that? Not very common. But this is the hole, you hike out to it. It's this innocent looking hole. Supposedly one night 4 kids got in, 2 they never found. And the divers have been in there, professional divers, that were permitted to go in. And if you look it up online, there's pictures, sketches, and, like I said, I'm not sure how deep it is, and how it connects to other areas of the world. It's just phenomenal to read that. I had to read it a couple times. It was just innocent looking picture. Then my wife at the time dragged me out to see her family. It was a nice trip. I don't say it out loud because she may have friends in here. Best part of that trip, the family was very nice. Was on our way back up that highway that goes from LA towards to Monterey for sure, maybe up to San Francisco, right along the coast. We stopped in the town of Gorda, Gorda, these restrooms, and I walk up to the door of the little shop. There's a sign there. And on the left side of the door, it says something like 20 people, 10 dogs, 30 elephant seals. Guess what I responded to? So I ran inside, and the merchant, oh, where are the elephant seals? And she said, you go out the door, you go left or right, you pull over, look over the side, and you might see them. Be careful, there's a storm coming in. So we're dressed for the airport. We went up the road because we were headed, pulled over. I looked down, I saw about 20 that I could see up above. So, vice reading the newspaper, not newspaper, I was dressed something like this. Clambered down this hill, as I went down, I'm thinking, They put me easy to get back up. It's kind of soft and sandy. And I had a little suitcase with a 200mm lens and a little bitty tripod. I could take my real photography stuff. And I get down and I see these two. The one, the big one, you can barely see his eye, actually somehow chased this one in the water. And the waves were coming, the water was really picking up, and the waves were coming in closer and closer to where I was standing. So these are not the ones I saw from above. But I told myself, my father always said, common sense. I'm not walking between these two in that water to get to the other ones. So I started photographing these two. The big one chased the one in the back there into the water. Look at the look on his face. See what he's doing? He's looking right at me. He turned his head. And I said, I'm not going any close. And you see how close the water's coming. I didn't have very much distance to get past it. The time was of the essence. I got back up to the car. I heard I had been gone for 2 hours. I thought it was 20 minutes. And I tell my students, I rarely will photograph when we go on a field trip, because if I start photographing, I really get into it, I'm going to forget you're here, which is serious. I forget things around me. And I was not walking past that guy. You know, he's looking right at me. He's probably saying, what's that? Let's cruise towards the end here. We're in Arizona. I haven't been in much of it, mostly around in the Tucson area, all of the Tucson area. You hear about these canyons. We all know probably the danger of the canyons. You walk through them, there's water coming through. You can't climb up. Well, I guess you could. Well, probably can't. If something happens upstream, you don't know about it. Maybe a storm, maybe a flood, who knows? No water comes through that canyon. Your options are pretty much zero as far as getting out of there. And this could be the beginning of one of those canyons right here. More hoodoos. And I looked at them, you know, a bunch of rocks standing on one on top of the other. Pretty interesting. Colored by the elements. And eventually, I get creative. And you'll see that creativity eventually. So my first saguaro cactus. That's where the creativity comes in. Prickly pear cactus. I was doing a close-up and accidentally touched one, and I know why they call them prickly. Somehow I used that out of order. Use a flower. Barrel cactus. Garden. I just saw some documentary talking about a garden, some booze they make. Yeah, I just saw it the other day. Yeah, I'm thinking I have a picture of that. Maybe I should have taken a bite, but I don't drink. Has anyone had that stuff?
Just remember.
Oh, don't remember? You had more than one, huh?
You put a worm in the bottom.
Really?
A little like you took out insect larvae, peanut larvae, inside and then just out of how they did.
Well, here's a good reason not to drink it. Jumping choya. If you have someone you don't like, and send them a pair of Bermuda shorts and tell them to go for a walk to the street. Canyon tree frog. Heat of the day. This kind of lime cool. Ocotillo. Interesting plants. Then we went to Fort Huachuca. How many folks have been there? You get permission to go, hike up and see spotted owls. Unfortunately, I had a 500mm lens, and the trail wasn't that wide at that point. It was dropped off on both sides, so we're kind of hanging off the trail, trying to photograph these two in the shadow. So I asked the question the other day. I guess everyone's heard about the fact that the barred owl is moving into the area and it's sort of out competing the spotted owls. And I think it's Fish and Wildlife. It's partial. It's Fish and Wildlife that wants to eliminate a whole bunch of barred owls. Bird club, yes. And I was asked, what do I think? I haven't answered the question yet. Clark's spiny lizard, I believe this is. It's kind of interesting. These things allow rather close approach. And if you're really not paying attention, you might not even see them kind of blend in. Very beautiful pattern. And a saguaro. I heard tell, of course you never know if these things are true. There was some guy who was trying to, I forget the right term, he was trying to take home a cactus. Well, he tried it. Well, anyone ever heard that story? He cut it down. He was cutting it down. The thing let loose and fell on him. Is that right?
I don't know, I've heard the same story.
Yeah, supposedly he's no longer with us. So that's maybe it was good to get him out of the gene pool. I'm not sure. Black-tailed rattlesnake. Right near the cottage where we stay in. Don't walk barefooted at night. You walk in the dark. This is out of order. Sometimes I spend so much time working on these things, and this is where I make a mistake when I'm taking the slides out of where I've been looking at all of them, and I put them in trays, and I don't pay attention. I get them out of order, and out of order now. There's an area, well, Mount Lemon, we're almost done here. Mount Lemon, you can start at the bottom of the road in the desert, go through a couple of different life zones, wind up 27 miles at the top in Summer Haven, thank you, in the wrong season. 6,000 feet, the time we did it, and there's snow at the top. Fascinating. So it may be out of order. You're not going to waste time trying to get it back. Oops. So there's an area called the Basin and Range. And this is essentially what it looks like. I'm in the mountain, the range, and looking at the desert, the basin. This is the habitat. Let's see what I can do. Yeah, I got all the order. Well, there's the snow at the top. Very fortunate. Unfortunate. So if you've ever been out west of the storm, I guess even in the Adirondacks, it could look like this. It's pretty dramatic. So I was wondering how to end the show. So maybe a picture of the sheer columns might work. Or a picture from the mountains looking down in the town. I thought this would do it. The saguaro cactus, beautiful plant, pretty interesting. We wanted to anthropomorphic with the silver waving at us. I apologize for the mix-up at the end. Thank you for your time and your patience. I can entertain any questions quickly if there are any.
Yeah, and if I can get this thing working. I think I got it. Yeah, anyone here who has a question for John, raise your hand. I'll bring you this microphone to ask it. Anyone at home on the Zoom who has a question, post it in the chat column, and Derek will read it off for John here. So,
John, in the petroglyph picture from Capitol Reeves, there were two animals that looked to me like they had very thick, long necks, a llama or an alpaca. Do you suppose one of those might have been a picture of an alpaca or a llama?
Oh, they could have been. Remember, there were a lot of critters that used to be in the country in North America that aren't anymore. I was thinking. I can't think. There is something that used to be here that's not. I say yes. Because all those things are right in Central and South America. Of course, there's four of them, two domestic and two are not. Yeah, Banaka, alpaca, llama. Yeah, two are domestic and two are not. So they were in North America. The jaguar used to be, now I think there's still one hanging around in Mexico. And there's some other things that used to be in the country that aren't any longer. So I'd say yes. The thing that gets me though is how perfect those drawings look. They didn't look worn at all. It's like somebody just did them. So I was a little bit, I took the picture, it was just too perfect. But it's interesting, if anyone has been watching, there's some program, there's a documentary last week, Civilization, or something, I forget what it was. And they talked about how humans first came into the world, and how they developed, and the things they used to do, the drawings, and other art forms, that we are seeing for sure that we do know are legitimate. And the fact that, there were Neanderthals and other human-like critters, art's been a form. And a lot of the stuff we know is because of some of that art. Our interpretation of what people drew years ago. I find it fascinating. I wish I could learn more about it.
I have to ask you, John, if you left UMass on a Friday and you said it was Monday you got to Glacier National Park? Sunday evening? How fast were you driving?
Well, it was 3 or 4 of us driving.
Oh, so the other guys were driving fast and you were obeying the speed limit?
We took turns. So I would drive, and in fact, he had a mattress that almost filled, left 2 people could lie back there, and I was asleep. And someone else was driving, but we just went straight through, we didn't stop, in 24 hours. So essentially 48 hours.
Alrighty.
We got to Glacier National Park, right? I showed you a picture that said it was the first picture I took. That's just when we got there.
Excellent, excellent. You have more questions for John? Anyone here? Oh, hang on.
Thanks, John. It was very nice to hear all the very personal stories around those beautiful photos that you made. It's very inspiring. I know both are very inspiring. I just a quick question on that Glacier National Park. When was that? What year was that?
77.
77. So are there still equally, there are not that many places?
I don't know that we saw any then, to be honest with
Oh,
you.
is that right?
Yeah. Wasn't really obvious. I mean, you know that all around the world, you hear talk about glaciers receding from
Yeah, right.
And I don't recall seeing any out there.
Oh, it had already started.
I met this fellow at Arcadia, we started talking, and then I met you again over at Belchertown.
That's right.
And
Like Wallace.
Lake Wallace, that's right. It's only the second time I've been there, although I've lived in Belchertown 24 years. Fellow photographer, and this guy's photography is top drawer. Yes.
Your projector is set up here. I had assumed when you said you had two projectors, you were gonna like go through the whole reel on one and then switching the whole reel on the other. You were going back and forth each slide at a time, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you line them up, and you really have to get them lined up, and they stayed lined up pretty well. You just go back and forth with this milestone and see if I can get a small one. A buddy of mine, like Digital, gave me all his film equipment, including a smaller dissolved unit, but it stopped working. How many people know the name Les Campbell? Other than you. You know the name? He was a really famous photographer and operator of slideshows. And then I came along, and some interesting things happened, interesting interactions. But I bought one of these from him. It was really old, but I'd like to get a smaller one because it's just too cumbersome to deal with. But, you know, it works.
It sure worked tonight, so.
Yeah.
We have any questions in Zoom, Derek? Or everybody there go to sleep?
We're good. Past the bedtime, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what I hope.
That's why they don't come in person, is because they don't want to stay up late enough to have to drive home after the talk.
Perhaps.
So I want to thank you folks for inviting me back. Maybe one day you want to see Nature Odyssey East. It's, like I said, it goes from Newfoundland and South Florida. We had a lot of birds. Studied a few places up north.
Actually, I heard from, I mentioned Chris Fisher to you earlier tonight, who sometimes has given programs to us, but he said that if you want to go down to Hartford Audubon in Connecticut and give a program down there, that they'd love to have you, and then some of us could go down to Hartford and see you down there.
You talked to him?
He sent me an email.
Really?
So, yeah.
Cool. Well, I haven't been there in a long time. I'll go.
Yeah, he was sending his regrets for tonight, because apparently we moved to Tuesday night, and now we meet on the same night of the month as Hartford Audubon does. So that's why he would have been here if he could have, but he's at the Hartford Audubon
I'm glad
program
to meet the
instead.
same nights. Maybe I'll get a program out of it.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to thank John one more time.